We're continuing our series on growing in prayer, looking at some of the practical details of how to actually do it. And in this little 12-minute segment, we're looking at a practical plan of how to grow in prayer. Some things you can actually do to make it work. Now, we talk a lot about loving God with all of your heart, the first commandment. But that's not enough. I mean, that's the engine for sure. But you can love God with all your heart. I mean, really be sincere. I love you and I want to obey you and I'm totally sincere. But if you don't have a couple other things in place, you're not gonna progress as much. And I like to identify 3 things. And when I identify them, I've taught this for 40 years, by the way. And I'm only saying that to say, whenever I bring these up, especially the first 2, people go, what? Always it's, what? And I go, let me finish. And then let's see where your prayer life is in a year or 2 from now. Because I'm really confident in these 3 things that will dynamically change your prayer life. But on the first hearing of it seems a little nebulous.
Tell us the secret, Mike.
Okay, here's the secret. Number 1, it's not in order. Number 1, set a schedule for times where you have concentrated prayer. Put it on your weekly schedule, the hour, maybe say it's a 1-hour block. Some people it's 30 minutes, some it's longer, 2 hours, whatever. That's not my business right now to talk about that. Set it in your schedule. If you don't set it in your schedule, but you only pray when an opportunity makes itself, you will rarely pray. You will rarely pray. I assure you, having struggled with the prayer life and really take hold of it I'm talking 40 years, this is really true.
Yeah, we need to pay attention to that.
No, it's really true. And we'll get to that in a second. The second one is, this almost sounds as ugly and boring, make a prayer list. What? And the third one is, you have to have a right view of God. You have to, if he's the angry coach, the disengaged father, that's the image, you're not going to stay with it. Well, let's go to the very first one. Well, first I'm gonna throw something out there. I've said this again for 40 years. I'm going to say it again. If you make a schedule, I'm talking about a person you really love Jesus, you're going for it, and you get a prayer list and you have a right view of God, I like to make this. They always go, what? You will pray, I need a drum roll. You will pray 10 times more in the next 12 months than you have the last 12 months.
I believe it.
But I've said that over the years, and almost everyone says, what are you talking about?
Sounds so non-spiritual.
And right? I say, okay, tell me about your prayer life. Not how much you wanted to pray, how much you actually did pray in the last year. And a lot of folks, they push back on this. And so the reason you make a schedule, because there's so many demands on our time. And if we're not intentional about making time for this, I have a schedule in I set apart time in my schedule for a number of things in my life that are non-negotiable. And so when something else comes across my life, maybe 10% of the time I'll violate that schedule, but the vast majority, 85, 90%, I will not, because it's consecrated time. It's a set time and an appointment. I have time with the Lord. I have time with my family. And I don't keep it every time, but I have it locked in, and I won't move those boundary lines when something else comes. I have times for other things as well. But I've liked to say over the years that if you don't schedule your time, emergencies and other people will schedule your time. And if you just leave it to the wind, it will not happen.
How do you call it? The tyranny of...
The tyranny of the urgency. Yes.
It's true.
Instead of the priority of what's important, you'll live under the tyranny of the urgent. They'll knock on the door, they'll have a social thing, they'll have an emergency, they gotta talk to you and only you. Here's a new opportunity, here's a new show, it's just a buzz of activity, good, bad, and ugly. And the tyranny of the urgent will get you.
That's why we love our Sacred Trust.
Yeah, our Sacred Trust at the International House of Prayer at IHOP, we commit to X amount of prayer meetings per week, and they get to pick the schedule of the time. But that time, I ask them to make it a sacred part of their life. And
saves you.
Because a lot of folks go, well, it's the Lord, He understands. And I go, it's not about God being mad. Like I remember talking to a guy once, and I said, no, it's my prayer time now. And they were all, it was at a conference actually, but I had even when I would travel, and I did for 3 or 4 years in the early 90s, I traveled a bit, but I still had scheduled time with the Lord, even in my conference world. And they were all going out for dinner, and they said, let's go. I go, no, I don't feel inspired to pray. I don't feel any big deal, but it's on my schedule. I just do it. And the guy said, well, God won't mind if you do it. I go, I know he doesn't. He's so gracious. I'm the one that will mind. I'm the one, not that it's going to be a great time, but if I give away those 1 and 2 and 3 hour shots all the time, I end up a month and 2 and 3 and 4 later, I've not done it.
Yeah, totally.
So I'll ask you right now, you listening, in the last 30 days, how much time have you actually set apart? I mean, did you actually set apart to pray? And most sincere believers go, oops, well, last month was hard. Okay, do the month before. Oh, that was really hard too. Right? I go, that's how it works. Yeah. Well, when I first got a hold of this, I was only about 18, 19 years old. I was at the university, maybe 19, something like that. And an older man of God came and told me this. He goes, when's your scheduled prayer time? He was part of the Navigators Ministry. You know, they're more dedicated and they're more, you know, got things organized. And I went, I don't ever schedule time to pray. I just kind of pray on the run. He goes, how much do you pray? I go, almost never. He goes, there's a reason. I go, well, prayer's boring. He goes, yeah, I get that, but there's a reason you don't pray. It's not a priority on your schedule. It's not something that you will push things away to make sure you stay with. Yeah. He goes, I'm going to tell you this. He goes, you take the next 3 months. You pick an hour. Even if you don't make it the whole hour, you set an hour apart. Even if you cave in the hour and give up, which I did a few times. And he goes, I promise you the next 3 months you'll pray so much more than you have at any 3-month period of your life. I was at university and I went, oh, okay. He goes, try it. So I picked 9 o'clock at night because, you know, I'm a university guy. 7 in the morning, you know, it was like 3 in the morning, 7 in the morning, I couldn't even think. Now I'm opposite. I get up early, now I'm dead tired at 9 at night, but back in those days, I couldn't get up for a 7 a.m. prayer meeting to save my life. I talk to young people, they go, I'm trying to get up early. I go, no, go with the schedule that works for your life, actually.
Yeah,
there's nothing special about this time, or this time. It's when you're alert. Just get it a time when you're alert. In this season of my life, I'm very tired at night, but very alert in the morning.
That is key because sometimes there's this legalism related to if it is not in the morning.
See, I'm alert at 5 a.m., but I'm dead at 9 p.m. But when I was 18, it was the exact opposite. And in my 20s, I hated 6 a.m. prayer. Hated them. I didn't mind evening ones though. I hated morning ones. But I got free. But I just said I'm gonna do it when I'm alert. But anyway, so I set that 9 o'clock hour at the university for 3 months and. 5 days a week, not 7 days a week. And I did it like 90% of the time. I actually did it. I go, it's like a class. It's like I was on the university football team. So the practice was at 3 o'clock. I showed up every day at 3 o'clock. I didn't say, hey, if I got something going on, I'll do it. No, the coach said, you show up to the practice, that is non-negotiable. And I found out I actually did it 4 to 5 days a week. I didn't like what happened in the prayer time, but I was actually praying. So now the next thing is the prayer list, because the prayer schedule helps you know when to do it. And I never kept it 100%, and that's not the only time I prayed. I prayed over 40 years, many times outside of that scheduled time.
And
many times.
Do you have a list that you write down every day? Or is it a digital one? What do you recommend?
No, I don't write down every day because you'd never do it.
Okay.
I write down, there's 3 different lists that I have. And here's why I write down a list. Because a list, I don't pray the list every time, but a list gives me a focus. Because when I go to my prayer time, typically I'm a little tired or flustered from the last 6 hours of doing whatever I was doing. I'm talking about over the last 40 years. I look at my prayer list, I go, oh yeah, okay, I remember now. The list gives me a focus. So I have prayer for my inner man, for my internal life in God and ministry. So, and I've really simplified it. I have a 10 letter acronym: fellowship, F, fear of God, E for endurance, L for love. And I have an acronym. I used to have all those categories written down, but I didn't have an acronym for it. I kind of forced them into the acronym. I had 10 or 12 areas and I wrote them down. I didn't do it in one day. I had like 2 areas for my inner life in God. I want to grow in love, to love God more. I want to grow in the fear of God. Then I do a little more. I want to grow in understanding of the Bible. I wrote that down. It took me maybe a year or two to get 10 or 12 on the list. But then when I went to my prayer time, I knew what to say.
Yeah.
I never kept it 100%. And I get way off the subject anytime I want to.
Yeah.
But when I lose a sense of inspiration of another area, and I'm kind of bewildered, I look at my list, I just do the next one then.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that has helped me.
So before you go to the next point, walk us for a few seconds. You have 10 in your acronym or whatever it is.
It is 10.
Actually,
Fellowship is 10. I've got it down to 10. I've slipped a few of my other things, subjects into those.
So you have, let's say, 3 hours
Yes.
in one day. Do you have already planned to have like the first hour in the middle of my hour is after I read a passage, or I skip them here and there? Just walk us through it.
Okay,
Or there's no
I
law
got a
or-
2-hour prayer. I got a 2-hour prayer meeting. I got that I got 3 prayer lists. I got the prayer for my inner life in my ministry. Secondly, prayer for people and other ministries.
Okay.
Like I pray for YWAM. I pray for Cairo, Egypt. I pray for Jerusalem. Cairo and Jerusalem are 2 cities I've locked into. We've prayed a lot for over the years for North Korea. You know, there's some real hot spots in the world for things in Syria. So I've got some ministries like YWAM and some of the top leaders, John Dawson, Lauren Cunningham, Mark Anderson, just different ones. Andy Bird. I've got a few of them that I want to pray. But when I'm tired, I kind of forget. I go, oh yeah, John Dawson, of course, my dear friend. But I've made a commitment to pray for him. So I have a prayer list of cities or ministries.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, there's a justice prayer list, you know, like ending of abortion, stopping of human trafficking, of some of the darkness that's happening in our legal systems, you know, where the word of God is being driven out of the culture. So those are 3 just real simple little prayer lists. And what I really love to do is open up, and I'm reading the Gospels. You know, I'm reading Matthew 10, and I'm taking the Bible and turning it into conversation. That's my favorite. Is when I'm just reading the Bible, pray reading the Word, where I'm turning the Word into conversation. So now I got a 2-hour prayer time. So I sit down, and I don't have to do those 3 lists every time. I got my Bible in front of me. Of course, I'm at IHOP. I got anointed music up on the stage. I'm going, ooh, this is going to kind of get fun. I always get out my paper for journaling. I always got my laptop. And often now I just put my Bible program open and I'll read it. Sometimes I'll read, I have my hard copy Bible there, but often my Bible's here. And I want to journal. I want to write down what I'm praying. Because if it inspires me, I write it down. Even if I look at it a week later, it doesn't inspire me the next time. But if it inspires me a little bit, I want to get the language of it. Because it's like the Holy Spirit saying, hey, I gave that to you. And it doesn't always move me, but it does sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I go back to the same things over and over. So it's, let's say 2 in the afternoon, and I've done my Bible for a little while, and then I go, you know, I want to do my fellowship acronym, those 10 things. But I'll take maybe only 2 minutes on each one, or maybe one of them I'll spend 6 minutes on, then I'll skip the other one, and skip the other one, then maybe 8 minutes on one, and then skip the other 3. I'm not committed to do all 10, but they're always there in front of me. I do my fellowship prayer often when I'm driving. When I'm driving, I got a 5-minute drive, a 9-minute drive. I go, instead of listening to music, I just go, and there's nothing wrong with that. I go, I'd rather just talk to the Lord. But I'm real engaged in what I just did and what I'm about to do. I'm a little bit spacey. Well, start with F, fellowship. F, fear of the Lord. Lord, Psalm 86:11, unite my heart to fear your name. Lord, increase the fear of God. So I'm driving, I'll do that for about a mile or something. Then I go, E, endurance. Oh, I feel a little weary. That's the same as perseverance. Give me, that's Colossians 1, verse 10, give me endurance, strengthen me so I don't cave in on just the weariness of the task. I need supernatural endurance. L, love. I want to abound in love. Father, the way that you love your Son, Jesus prayed that you would impart it into me and give me an impartation of love for your Son. And, you know, and I go right down through the list. And so I often do that when I'm driving more than when I'm sitting in the prayer room.
That's the importance of the acronym, that you can just pull it from your mind in a second.
And see, in the old days, I had the 12 or 13 categories memorized, but sometimes I had to stop and think them through. But the acronym makes it so easy. And again, I crammed a few topics together to make the acronym work because I couldn't think of a 10-letter acronym like this. But it's fellowship with God, you know, 1 John 3:1-3, our fellowship is with the Father and the Son. I go, there you go. It's a perfect word, you know. And so then the last thing in terms of growing in prayer is a right paradigm of a perspective of God. He's a tender Father. We automatically have the idea of the distant father, the angry coach, the stern teacher, the authority figure in our life that kind of, they crack the whip, but we're not real sure. We want to be and open my heart with them. But when we have the right image of the Father, the Luke 15, the Father that rejoices over the prodigal son who's returning, the Father who's celebrating anyone returning to him, then you run to him instead of from him. And you get the right view of God, then you want to pray. You want to run
enjoyable.
to him.
It's all about pleasure.
Yeah, I like being in his presence because he's smiling at me.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are some three practical things. Get a schedule, develop some prayer lists, and I've got several of them on our website, the MikeBickle.org website. We got a few lists there, and I got a lot of it in the book, Growing on Prayer. I break this down in a lot more detail. But there you have it. There's a simple, practical plan, but I want to guarantee you, you get a prayer list, you get a schedule, a right view of God, I guarantee you'll pray 10 times more in the next 3 months or 12 months than you ever did before if you do this.
Come on.